Hello retro fans! Welcome to another episode about some C64 custom stuff, and this time the main reason for this episode is that I have received something that looks really cool, and this adds to kind of a, let's call it, collection of things I already started to collect quite a while ago, but never really found the time to dig into this topic as much as I had in mind so far. I had planned, and initially I thought that this is going to be kind of an easy, just start your recording and walk through episode, but it ended up to become quite a mess because I stepped in so many different topics and I was going to test so many different things that I was really close to kind of spoiling that whole episode or that whole topic, because I really had a hard time to find an end on certain things, and some of the stuff I'm going to present in this episode was really a little bit, let's say, searching the internet, testing a couple of things, and was a bit like a forward and backward motion. And finally, I think I got to a point where I, kind of happy with the result. But, it's not perfect, but anyway, I really had to come to an end. And as usual, let's start with a short view on my desk. And as you can see, it's already pretty messy because I have used so many stuff for this episode that it was really hard to squeeze this all on my desk. And enough of the chit chat, let's jump straight into the topic. Let's switch back to the desk, and the thing that kind of kicked off this whole stuff or this topic was that I have received this so-called Skullcart from Edu Arena. I hope I pronounced this almost correctly. He's active on Twitter, and he was kind of showing this stuff, and I think the first guy who has posted an image with this cartridge was Lukash. And since I was in contact with Edu anyway, I thought, this is something I really have to get from my cartridge collection. You may have recognized over the past couple of hundred episodes that I tend to collect some cartridges, and I was really interested in to get some custom built cartridges. And interestingly, over the last, almost months, I have collected a nice collection, small collection of custom cartridges. And one that really kicked off this whole topic with this non-rectangle shaped cartridges was this super Zaxxon Replica, which was built by Big Pie. I hope I'm not right. I think so. And the interesting thing is that this is a so-called bank switching cartridge, and this is a very nice thing to test PLAs and PLA replacements on the C64, because the timing and everything is pretty crucial, and therefore this isn't a really easy task for some of the PLA replacement parts. And fortunately, this one was working pretty well. I got this as an assembly kit. I mean, there are not so many parts on it. It's not really difficult. And I just had to burn the EPROM, and I have used an EEPROM for this project. And interestingly, I had some troubles at the very beginning. I can't remember what was really the issue, but I was testing this on this so-called EPROM 64 cartridge adapter, but this is not a bank switching cartridge, so ROM images like Super Zaxxon aren't working on this cartridge. But this is a cartridge that has been around for quite a while, and I think it's coming from the Forum 64 as well. It's from G.I. Joe and Auspuff. At least these guys are Jump and Mactron, so probably 4 guys. These guys are active on Forum 64. And this is a very nice thing to test ROM images and ROMs, etc., as long as they are not bank switching ROMs. And the interesting thing is that you got a lot of options, so you can configure this EPROM 64 cartridge to, let's call it whatever cartridge you want. And I just wish my dog would stop doing those strange noises. And yeah, but as I said, for those bank switching cartridge ROMs, it is not working. Anyway, the next thing I had in mind was to get something on the Skullcart, and I'm going to show you how I have done this. And hopefully I'm not going to mix up all of my video buttons, because I have created so many video snippets for this episode that I may get a bit confused. But actually we have to start with basically a window section. And here we can see that this is a tutorial. And this tutorial is about how to turn a basic program into a cartridge for the C64. And I will go and post the link in the description section as usual. And the interesting thing is that I had to type this basic program because this is a screenshot and there's no copy and paste. So there was some typing involved, but fortunately it's not that much. And I went through this quite quickly. And I had no typing mistake, surprisingly. And the thing is that a basic program is actually not capable of starting from a cartridge on its own. So we need some kind of a bootloader program. And this is actually what this type of basic program is doing. It is adding some stuff to the memory. And this creates basically the bootloader required for the basic program. And he is explaining how this is going to work and how you can use the monitor to check whether what you have typed in went to the memory in the correct way. And he is doing some debugging, and he is explaining how the bootloader code is working. That's all stuff I'm going to skip. That's something you can read if you are interested in. The most important stuff is how we have to proceed with this. And he's creating a small basic sample program, which I have prepared on my own as well. And then he's going through this whole procedure. And this is actually what we are going to do right now as well. So let's switch over to Wise, which is basically this one. And I just recognized that I have kind of screwed up my window capture. So let's add this quite quickly so that we have full visibility on what I'm going to explain. I just recognized that I may have to start the program I want to look at first before we can select this here in my window. And here we go. So that's not really what I have expected. What's wrong? Why is monitor? Here we go. So, and we're not going to need this one, so let's just switch this off, and then let's move this to the side. And we're going to go to this later. So let's switch back to Wise, and just have to disable the monitor because Wise can't be operated as long as the monitor is running. And to make things a little bit easier, I mean, if we work with files we want to burn on an EPROM, then there are basically two ways. So one way is we are going to use an EPROMer on the C64, and that's something I have tested at the very beginning, and that is basically looking like this. This is the QuickByte 2 EPROMer for the C64. It's dating back to 1970, I think. No, 85, so it's even older than I thought. And this is actually working quite fine. So I was already able to burn some EPROMs with this device. I mean, the range of EPROMs is quite limited, but basically we talk about a device from 1985, so we cannot expect that this device is capable of burning EEPROMs or something like this. Nevertheless, I was going to test this because I was really interested in to see whether this is going to work, and I captured this in this video here. So first I have selected the 27512 EPROM. That's exactly the type I'm using, but the software assumes that we talk about EPROMs and not EEPROMs. But the interesting thing I was interested as well is whether this EPROMer is working with the Pi 1541. The thing is that this EPROMer has some kind of built-in floppy speeder, and in the past, the very early Pi 1531 versions weren't working with this one, and unfortunately SD to IAC devices aren't working with this floppy speeder as well. So you have to deselect the fast load with F6, and this makes this whole procedure pretty cumbersome because it is very slow. But we are able to use the fast loader, and so I'm really happy that this is working with the Pi 1541. You have to keep in mind, if you want to use the Pi 1541, if you want to have the comfort of the floppy speeder, then you really have to put your EPROM images into a disk image. And this can be a little bit complicated because an EPROM image may exceed your disk space quite easily, and therefore you have to create a couple of disks, and then you have to read this to the buffer, and then you have to burn the buffer step by step to the EPROM, and it is indeed a quite long and exhausting exercise. But finally, to cut a long story short, it wasn't working at all because EEPROMs can't be burned with the QuickByte 2. So that's the story about the QuickByte 2. And what I'm doing here is I'm testing the programming, and then I'm doing a race test to check whether the EPROM is empty, and yeah, the software was responding to me. The EPROM is empty, so no data has been transferred to the EPROM. So it was quite clear that I have to move back to my kind of proven TL8066 model, and this is probably the new, that's the newest model. That's the TL8666 2 Plus, and this one is basically just a new version of the older one. It is not capable of burning a certain higher voltages, so if you have very old EPROMs or something like this, then you really have to keep the old model, the 8066A, or what was the other number, CS, I think. but this one is able to burn certain types of EPROMs and ICs with lower voltages than the older model, so you may have to keep both of them. But actually, for what I was doing for this project, this one has worked pretty fine, and I'm going to guide you through the steps what I have done to create the ROM image which I was going to burn. So then let's move back to our Windows setup. So that's basically the process we're going to follow for creating a bootable basic program. And actually now let's step into the action. And I have mentioned the issue with the disk image, and to make things a little bit easier for my side, I set up an IEC device for Wise, so it's basically just a directory. And if you're going to type in some, that's the wrong keyboard, I'm sorry. That's not working at all because I have not selected Wise. So I have set up a directory which is going to act as my IEC device, so that's pretty similar to an SD to IEC device on the C64. And the advantage is that those files are really plain into, they are in this directory, or the directory contain the plain files, no disk image, nothing like this. So you do not have to transfer your files in and out of the disk image all of the time. It's somewhere in your directory. And as a first step, we have to load this auto run PRG. That's basically the one I have shown you in the tutorial page. And we have to start this. And then we have to type in some poke addresses. And they set the start address for the basic program we are going to load right now. And now we have to load our basic program we want to use. And now we can open the monitor. And here it is. And if we're going to have a look at the memory, for example, like this one, we can see that there is actually some data. And if we're going to compare this to our tutorial, we will see that this is quite similar. What we can see there as well. At least I pretty much hope so. And yeah, it looks a little bit different because I have a different monitor program, but actually it is, yeah, the very same. And now we have to save this to disk. And you may have seen that I took a couple of attempts until I found the right syntax, because the issue was that we have to use not device 08, we have to use device 0, because 0 means this memory dump is saved to our file system. And the interesting thing is that I went through this a couple of times, and almost every time this file ended up in a different directory. So that's really strange. And the last test I was doing, it was ending up in the Wise directory, so it was kind of easy to find. But some may expect that this ends up in our IEC device, which makes it kind of logical for me at least. Anyway, as long as you can find the file, then everything will be okay. Because for the next step, we're going to need this file. And therefore, I'm switching to my next window, but unfortunately it is gone as well. So let's try to find my window back, and here it is. So something is wrong with my window capture setup, and so let's make this a little bit bigger so that you can see what I'm doing. And now we're going to need this so-called cart conf exe. and let's just check whether our file has arrived here. We are looking for burn 3, and as you can see on top of the directory, it is already available. And now we have to convert this memory dump file, which is actually some kind of bin file, so it's well, a certain format, into a cartridge format. And no, actually that's wrong. We have some kind of cartridge format right now, and we have to convert this into a EPROM bin that's actually burnable using an EPROM burner. What's wrong? Everything all right? Oh, my dog has some issues. I hope it's not going to be serious. And then we just have to say the type is normal, the input file is going to be burn3, output file is going to be EPROM bin. We may end up with an error message because this is going to exist already. No, can't see it. So anyway, it's completely up to you how you're going to call this. And now we can use this EPROM1.bin file and burn this directly to our EPROM. Some background of this is actually the memory dump we have created contains a start address, so the first 2 bytes are not necessary, and cartconf exe just ensures that this is really a bin formatted file, and this is basically required to burn the EPROM. So I'm going to skip the EPROM part because this is something I have already done, and then I added this EPROM to this Skullcart, and now let's have a look how this is going to look like and whether the basic program is working. Just have to make a little bit more space on this side so that we are able to see the card. Actually, too many converters. Because the cool thing with this cartridge is it has some glowing eyes. So actually we can't see anything, so let's switch to a view where we have at least some output of the C64. And that's supposed to be this one. And here we go, surprise, surprise, we have a basic program starting from a custom-made cartridge, which is actually based on the Magic Desk cartridge as well, so it could be used for bank switching ROMs as well, but I went the simple and easy way. What I forgot to mention, and that's really important if you're going to use cartconf as a converter program, this cartridge conversion process requires a certain size. And that's the reason why I have used this memory range in Wise in order to create a 4K image. Yeah, as we can see, I'm using memory range from 8000 to 8 FFF, and this is exactly 4K. And if you use a different memory range, then cartconf is going to tell you that this is not a proper cartridge ROM size, and therefore you have to look for some well, standard values, and this depends on your EPROM as well. So the 27512 is an 64K EPROM, if I'm not wrong. I think so. And yeah, I think so. And therefore we can put a lot of data onto it, so a basic program is not going to exceed this by far. At least you are going to create very huge basic programs. Anyway, that's so much about getting cartridge images onto real hardware. And the next thing I was working on, I mean, we talk about custom cartridges for the C64. And there's probably one thing that has been very famous over the last months, and this is indeed, let's switch to a different view. This is indeed Super Mario Bros. 64 for the C64. And as you can see, this is a custom-made cartridge, and I'm going to guide you through the steps how I have created this. So basically, the cartridge is not built by myself. So this was kind of a fan project, and I got this from the Forum 64. And but I'm not going to make this as kind of an advertising. So because we have already learned that Nintendo is pretty sensitive about this topic, so I'm just going to say, if you do some Googling and if you have a look at the Forum 64, you may find information about this stuff. I just can tell you that I got the case from Thingiverse, and what I'm going to show you right now is how I have built this whole thing. So let's start with the cartridge itself. Nope, that's the EPROM. That's not what I was talking about. I screwed up my videos as well, so something is really wrong with my setup. That's indeed a bit disappointing. I haven't recognized this in my dress rehearsal, so I may have screwed this up a bit later. And then let's start with this one first. The thing is that I have some issues with my PC, so every now and then it keeps crashing. And now here we have the cartridge build progress. So it's actually not very complicated. It's very similar to the Super Zaxxon cartridge. So we have basically one socket for the EPROM and two sockets for some logic ICs. We got basically 3 capacitors on it. They are just to buffer the supply voltage for those ICs. And I had constant troubles with my soldering iron. I have ordered now a spare part. I really hope this is going to fix my issues. It was really stopped heating every now and then, and that's so very much annoying that I really had to address this right now. And since I can't figure out whether this is the cable or if it's the soldering iron or if it's the whole soldering station, I thought let's start with the simplest thing and replace this soldering iron itself. And if this is not going to address the issue, then I know the soldering station is affected. And well, now I'm trying to fit this LED into this case. So this case has a pretty strange structure or approach. I have no idea at all. Interestingly, the option to mount the LED behind the PCB is a very interesting thing, but I have no idea why this cartridge was created in such a complicated way. I may go and make some how is it called in Thingiverse? I forgot the term. You can use an existing model and upgrade and change this, and it's called damn, I lost it. A remix. Now I got it. So sorry for the delay, getting older, quite hard to avoid. Yeah, I will go and create a remix. I have no idea why we have this additional lid at the bottom of this cartridge, and the screw isn't really fitting very well into it because the hole you screw the screw through is very small, and the hole where the screw has to get some contact with the bottom of the cartridge is even bigger. So I've just filled it with glue to get at least some grip on it, and the idea I have is basically, oops, jump back to the EPROMing, and that's really a pretty weird mix of videos tonight, so I'm really sorry for this one. So I think I really screwed a couple of things during one of the crashes of my PC, and I'm really sorry for this one. I haven't recognized this at the beginning. So actually, let's try to find the remaining part I was going to show you, and this is actually the printing of this Super Mario case. And as you can see, first attempt, it took me a couple of attempts to get this right, and that's not really an issue of basically the printer or something like this. The first attempt was on this coated steel bed on the Prusa, but unfortunately this transparent filament has some issues getting some adhesive to well, getting stick to the bottom of this powder coated bed, and you may see it at the color already, especially with the left hand upper part, that it starts to get loose, and then you can see that the other parts got ripped off the board as well, and then the printer was kind of clearing the whole bed off of these parts. So, well, I replaced the bed and started another attempt. The second attempt failed as well because I was opening the window and got the filament stuck in the nozzle, but I have recognized it too late. Otherwise, I would have been able to rescue the print. I just recognized that the printer started to make some strange noises, and it already advanced to the second or third layer after the accident or incident, whatever you want to call this, and it was already too late. But the third attempt actually worked, and the interesting thing is that printing transparent filament is not as easy as it sounds, and I did indeed some learning, and I did some experiments with temperature, with speed, and all those different parameters, even the flow rate and everything like this, to get this as clear as possible. To make this short, I wasn't really able to create a very clear case, but I learned that this is pretty tricky with PLA, so probably it's not achievable at all. Or I may have to invest even more time, have to print very slowly down to 30% speed, something like this. I may have to use different flow rates and something like this. Increasing the temperature hasn't helped that much. It just has created a lot of stringing. And I had some issues clearing the parts afterwards. And what you can see here is that every layer we add up to the print is kind of decreasing transparency. And I'm going to skip forward to almost the end of the print because this is going to take a little bit. But I'm not really happy with the result. I mean, it looks quite nice. It looks much better than a non-transparent case. And especially for this special cartridge, I think it is a nice effect, a nice addition. And actually, as I said, this may require even more experiments, but what I've found on the internet is that transparent parts work with PETG or ABS material much better than with PLA. So that's probably something I have to test in the near future. So actually, I still hope that this is coming to an end right now. I thought I cut a major piece out of the making video out of this one, but well, anyway, I mean, it keeps printing, and let's switch back to the desk so that I can show you the cartridge as it looks right now. So as you can see, there are some parts where we have a chance to look through it, and you can see there's a nice sticker on this EPROM saying Super Mario Bros. And this has indeed a very nice effect. And we got a reset button on the side of it, and as I said, the cartridge is not fitting very well. I really have to spend some time making kind of a different version to get this more or less perfect. But not that much chatting, let's just test the cartridge. So in order to do so, let's switch off the C64 and let's get the cartridge into the system. And let's have a look whether it is working. And here we go, Super Mario Bros. 64. So this is actually version 1.1, so it's not the most recent version, but it's not going to make any issues here right now. I'm using the Nunchuck 64 adapter with a Nintendo Entertainment System controller. This time the wired version, simply because I couldn't find my wireless version. But well, anyway, I can pretend that this is just for the sake of having no input lag or something like this. Just kidding. So, you may have recognized that there is some interesting blinking inside of my C64 because I'm using the FPGA SID, and the FPGA SID has been configured to run at address D500. And if you're going to make a SID test, we may hear this as well. Yep, everything is working fine. And since we have no turbo cartridge or something like this, we can go straight and start a game. And this is in 50 FPS PLA system, so no chance to switch to 60 FPS. So, well, and I mean, the thing I was talking about was this LED, which is glowing through the PCB. I think you can probably see this here right now. You may switch shortly to the desk view, and then here we can see that the LED is behind the PCB, and it's kind of, well, sheeting some light on this Mario head, and this is a very nice effect, and I think the whole package is making a pretty good optic appearance, whatever, visually attracting. Anyway, so well, and this is basically Super Mario Bros. And you may know that I'm not really good at playing Super Mario, therefore I'm not going to bother you too long with this one. It is quite surprisingly that this game runs so well on the C64. There are some areas where it becomes a bit slow if there's too much action going on the screen. So if you have the chance to play this on a accelerated C64, like with the Turbo Chameleon 64 for example, or on the 128, then it switches to the 2 MHz mode. Then the game runs even more smoothly compared to the standard version, but usually on the PLA systems it's not that much affecting the game speed at all. So it's a very nice thingy. So I hope this was at least some kind of interesting to you. I'm not going to make this too long this time. I mean, it was just about getting cartridges onto the C64 and to show you what's going on the custom side of cartridges and how to burn images from basic to EPROMs so that they start from the cartridge itself. And big thanks to Edu for sending me this very nice Skull cartridge. And I'm going to post the link to the GitHub page on for the of the project on which this cartridge is based. I mean, if you turn it around, you can see that there are some additional ICs and especially some kind of soldering jumper pads, because this cartridge can be used for, I think, 4 different EPROM types, up to 1 megabit EPROMs. And Therefore, you have to do some configuration because you see that they differ in size as well. So you really have to tell the cartridge where to apply the voltage, for example, and which address line is routed to which pin. And the GitHub page is explaining how this needs to be done. And then you can build this whole stuff for yourself. And big thanks to all the people on the Forum 64 who have spent that much time developing such nice cartridges for the C64. And big thanks to all of my supporters on Patreon as well as on the YouTube channel membership. I really appreciate this, and I hope we are able to grow this even further so that I can let's say invest more in things like we have here on the desk. And if you're interested in certain details, feel free to use the comment section. And if you want to have a special episode about EPROM on the C64, how this is going to work, handling of disk images and all that stuff, then feel free to express this. I add this to my list of things I probably going to do sometimes. But actually, that's, well, all for this episode. I hope I haven't forgot something. No, probably I have mentioned everything so far. And then, well, feel free to subscribe to the channel, and feel free to follow me on Twitter or on Instagram. You have seen this in the intro after the title, where I can be found on the internet. And then that's all for this episode. See you for the next episode. Bye bye.